like there is no way around this thing called AI nowadays if you're not into the data topic. But thing is that there is no AI without data, and there is no good AI without good data. But how do these play together, and how can we ride the waves of the upcoming AI and data revolution? This will be explained by no one less than Laura Madsen.
All around us, data is constantly gaining more and more relevance in our private lives, our businesses, and our careers. For companies, it is turning from a competitive advantage into a survival factor. Those who do not use their data effectively will perish. It is high time to get a grip on the data chaos. Every other Tuesday on Unfuck Your Data, Krug interviews data professionals about how you can bring order to the chaos, thus making the most of your data for your company, your customers, and, of course, for you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, all other listeners too. Welcome back to the probably coolest data podcast from Germany, now brought to you in English. This is Unfuck Your Data, and I'm your host, Krug. And today we're in for some disruption and revolution in data and AI, as my fellow guest is no one less than the Chief Blow-Up Officer at Moxy Analytics and author of the AI and Data Revolution, Laura Madsen. Warm welcome to Laura. Hi, I'm happy to have you here, and please take a moment and introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. Hi. Very excited to be here with you. I am Laura Madsen. I am the Chief Blow Shit Up Officer at Moxy Analytics. Sometimes we refer to it as Blow Stuff Up Officer, but really the title is just to reflect the fact that titles are kind of bullshit. And
Nice.
and that a lot of what I do is really very much focused on challenging those long-held conventions in the data industry.
Very nice. And you recently, just at the time of the recording, recently published your fourth book, actually, in data.
Yep.
And it's called The Data and AI Revolution. And I have to admit that I'm getting a slight AI hangover, and now kindly help me, Laura. Why am I having this hangover of everybody throwing stuff with ChatGPT at me?
I know. Yeah, no, and I'm right there with you. It's so it's funny. The story behind how the book got written is a little bit of, my own AI hangover, which is last year, my business partner and I were doing our strategic planning for 2024 now. And she told me sort of, and probably, thinking that I would have a normal reaction. She told me that we were using ChatGPT to support some of our productivity efforts for marketing because we're a very small firm. And I kind of lost my, I did because so much of what I feel like I do for the industry is, read, consolidate, and sort of format and present concepts back. And I just felt like all of a sudden ChatGPT and its brethren have come along and very much pulled the proverbial rug out from under me. And I got pretty upset. And
I can totally relate to that.
Yeah, and maybe inappropriately so, right? I mean, I was just like, but after 25 years in this industry, it did feel like it was a pretty significant pivot. And despite knowing that it was kind of there and happening, it still felt like a big deal. So I just decided that if it was going to take my career from me, that I needed to understand it a little bit better. So I started researching the book at that point. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I do feel like a lot of what we're talking about and sort of using this term AI is a little bit of AI washing. Yeah.
So I totally can relate to that. Everybody was first scared, and then like really crappy results also showed up, like ChatGPT and its brethren really messing stuff up big time. but still AI somehow is there. And I think it has a kind of certain inevitability there.
Yes.
That we need to deal with it. Yep. But as everybody is throwing ChatGPT or a different LLM just for the sake of simplicity, and as it's the most common known, let's refer to ChatGPT here. The others are doing basically more or less in the same range. Right. So everybody's throwing Gen AI at a problem. And from my side, it's, it's nice that we have this tool, but it's a sledgehammer to smash through the wall. And oftentimes the real, at least to me, it feels like the real benefit would be to take some smaller models, which are more for your use case. And there are awesome models out there. And just to solve a certain problem and not throw ChatGPT at everything and hope that it works out.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it is very much a giant hammer when it's not necessarily a nail, right?
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things we did during I use the word we, it was me. I worked with a company to do this, but I wrote the book, but I just used the word we. We worked with an organization. I worked with an organization to help us create a personalized chatbot for Moxy during this time when I was writing the book, because I needed to understand, the process and what it felt like, because so many organizations are attempting to do something comparable. And so what we did is we took a baseline model and then we personalized it with all of the stuff that I have written and talked about on data governance, actually, because the previous book was Disrupting Data Governance. And we created a chatbot. And, it was interesting that, I went through that process. I could see kind of how it worked. The person I worked with, his name's Tom Nickum. He kind of explained, what he was doing all along. And so there was this moment where I had a little bit of a test to do, and it was Moxy was writing a job description. And so I had ChatGPT write a job description, and I think it was a data governance leader, something like that. And honestly, ChatGPT did an okay job. It was not a job description I would use, but it did an okay job. Then I went out to the Laura bot, which is what we lovingly referred to it in-house, and
Nice.
went out to the Laura bot and had it write the job description, use the same prompt, and it wrote that job description exactly how I would write it. So wow. I do think that there are, when you're very specific about your use case, when you've personalized that data, when you've used the right model as that baseline, I do think that, it is a helpful and useful tool. We are nowhere near, the big quote unquote AI mimicking human cognition, but a lot of these Gen AI systems are getting better every day.
But so at the end of the day, you say you took a large language model and then put in all the knowledge from your book and all the stuff that was available from you on data governance. And then it really turned out to write the exact or near exact thing that you expected it. And you would have said, okay, I couldn't have done this much better if I did it myself.
Yep.
Which is, in the first place, awesome. but on second thought, this is it's a narrow case of writing a job description.
It is.
And what's interesting to me is where's the break even? Because before it, you had to train this one. You had to feed the model all the information you wrote. And if at the same time you would have written the job description yourself, and would have been much faster.
Yes.
So are we there yet?
So no, we're not there yet, right? And but I do think that as organizations come to terms with what those very specific use cases look like, they will get to the point where there's some efficiency of scale, right? But it does beg the question of, and this is really what the book AI and the Data Revolution is about, which is, okay, now that I've spent many decades, most organizations have spent many decades at this point building data repositories, what we would consider to be a very traditional, in the old school ways of thinking about data warehouse, which is primarily structured data.
Hopefully they did.
Well, yes.
Hopefully they did.
That most organizations have spent some time, right, doing that. But that's structured data. And what we have been talking about in AI, what most of the work that has existed in AI, both generative and otherwise, is been on unstructured or semi-structured data.
Yeah.
So, there's a big gap between how the data industry that focuses on supporting internal enterprises exists versus the data industry that has been created to literally just build machine learning algorithms and AI. We use very similar terms, but the functions of those are very different. And one of the primary things that I found during the research was, we have existed primarily in the structured data world.
Yeah.
And they have primarily existed in the unstructured and semi-structured world. Bringing those two things together is I think the order of the day.
So this is the one big challenge we are facing in enterprises, that we bring together the world of, like you said, unstructured, semi-structured data, where all the AI or a lot of the AI tools have been created. And also like how social media is working, which had a totally different approach than an enterprise data warehouse,
right,
where totally different set of rules applies, data-wise, and also governance and all that. So
Absolutely.
Bringing those together, and you say, and this is sparking the revolution?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is, because there's a couple of things that have to happen. For one thing, most organizations have never really thought about unstructured or semi-structured data.
Yeah.
And they have no construct for how to bring that into a quote unquote data repository, right? So I use the term data repository sort of loosely, right? But it's supposed to encapsulate every version of a data warehouse, data lake, data stream, data swamp, data McMansion, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah. Let's call it data platform or warehouse or whatever. We know for the sake of this podcast that all those things are there to support decision-making based on data and are used to store and process data which are relevant for the company.
Right.
And whatever you choose, depending on time and your company and all that, it will fit the purpose.
Yes, exactly. So the challenge is, we have always thought about like, we pull that data in, we do something with it to transform it, because when you're dealing with numbers, you have to add context, right? Yeah. One means nothing. You have to tell you what the one meant.
Yeah. Is it a dollar? Is it a euro? Is it a person?
Exactly. Yeah. And we have struggled in the industry to govern that. Yeah. We've really struggled to govern what we would consider to be baseline numerical data. So now all of a sudden you're adding in what would be for most organizations a relatively net new set of job skills. Most of it are not AI professionals or machine learning algorithm PhD holders. So now we have to not only figure out how to bring that into our data repository, get those things to work together, but we have to figure out how to govern that as a function. And now we're not talking about data governance, which is a relatively small portion of that function. We're talking about governance big G, right? Like capital G governance, where we're bringing together concepts of corporate governance, portfolio governance, data governance, to make sure that all of those points are well accounted for. So yeah, it's a big shift.
I mean, this sounds like really, like say, like a paradigm shift, like really shifting away from this data governance as our fellow friend Tian Kai and I had a discussion on that. I was telling, we came to the conclusion that the best comparison we could come up with is that data governance are the referees on the football field or soccer field.
Yep.
Who ensure that everybody is playing the game to its rules. So, and also for these governance people, I mean, this is a huge shift, not only for them, but also for the whole company. When you say it's not only now taking care about the data game, but also about the whole game of the company, like portfolio. What does it mean? Like AI, what does it mean for our products? Do we need AI featured products, or are we AI washing there?
Right.
Or do we even have to I mean, this is then becoming a more of an economics question, like, do we have to AI wash to survive?
Yes. Yeah.
don't get me wrong, I hate AI washing, but at some point, some person with a degree in economics will raise the question, do we have to AI wash our products just because everybody else in the industry is doing it?
Right.
Also, they are telling me that a simple function now is AI. Right. Or that they are hiring, what also happened, they are hiring some people in a faraway country to clean up the stuff and call it AI cleaned.
Yes. Right. And that stuff has been happening for, long before AI became a thing, right? I mean, we've always kind of had that where it's like, oh, we've automated these, jobs. And no, you didn't. You just have a really big group of people working in another country doing that for you. And yeah, it is an important question around AI washing, because when I was working on the research for the book, I spoke to somebody that was, discussing, talking to a client. They were a vendor, they were a product software company, and the person said to them, "Well, but do you have AI?" And the individual was like, technically we don't have AI. We have predictive algorithms, but it does not reach the level of AI, and they wouldn't purchase from them. And so they ended up going to a company that had AI, right, with air quotes, right, and purchased from them. And so, this does beg the question of, what does AI really mean? And how do we define it? I think it's Voltaire that talks about, if you don't define the thing, it will get you in the end.
I'm coming from natural science, so definitions are in the German episodes. I'm quite infamous for demanding definitions from people on there. You totally get me there. That if you throw me a buzzword that I don't, or most of the audience don't necessarily know, give me a definition.
Yep. Yeah.
And if you don't do that, that's coming back and bite you.
Right.
Like really hard.
Exactly. So I think the challenge is we do not have a standard definition for AI. We certainly don't have one across the industry. We don't have one, sort of commonplace in, media as we talk about it. I interviewed a woman whose name is Melanie Mitchell. She wrote an excellent book about AI, and she relayed this story about how AI is just entirely too general of a term, and it's what was referred to as a suitcase word. So I'm sure you know the story by now, right? There's the 1956. A bunch of professors get together at Dartmouth for the summer to solve AI, right? They thought that they could do that in 1956. Okay. And one of the, I know, right? Jeez, that would be easy. One of the gentlemen, that his last name is Minsky, had he used the term suitcase word. And essentially what that is like everybody defines it differently based on the context.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we're dealing with, in terms of AI. And it's very hard for us to know that we're talking apples to apples when we throw around this word that doesn't really mean, it either means everything or nothing.
So that means, coming back as a company, if I want to start with doing something with AI, which is now at least in, I don't know the United States situation, but I know it here in the German-speaking countries, like everybody is doing something with AI because everybody else is perhaps doing something with AI. I mean, there was this infamous about big data, this infamous teenage sex quote. You know that one? No,
I don't think so.
Someone. I have to look the name up. He posted it as at a conference. He said like, big data is the new teenage sex, or big data is like teenage sex. Nobody knows how it really works.
Right.
Everybody else claims they are doing it because everybody else claims they are doing it and are afraid of that everybody else is doing it, and you would just want to belong there.
Right. Right.
So, and currently I'm seeing this with AI, that AI is the new teenage sex. So, but as a company, when I start, I really have to make a definition of what is AI for my company. Right. And right there, I'm quite along with the definition that was raised, I think, in the 50s, which said it's something that usually solving a task, which usually requires human intelligence by an automated system.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there are quite some systems which get really close to that for narrow cases.
Yes. Yeah. We are definitely dealing with a narrow AI.
Yeah.
One of the things I talk about in the book is I created sort of a litmus test, right? So if you think about AI as the big AI, you need, forgive me, but you need big data. And which I literally define as like, we're talking billions, if not trillions of rows of unstructured and semi-structured data, right? Because that's what you need. Which means you need computation power, right? And not just being in the cloud, but literally like being, like having the ability to account for these billions, if not trillion rows of data. So it's not just your average cloud that you can buy with a cloud platform, right? And then you need pretty sophisticated statistical methodologies. And that's where the machine learning piece comes in, to account for essentially taking all of that unstructured data and breaking it down into machine readable code and then applying the algorithm to it. So if you use that as a litmus test for quote unquote AI in organizations, I would say that the vast majority, 90 probably % are not doing that. They may very well be buying point solutions.
Yeah.
Right. But they are not doing that sort of natively.
But now, rather maybe provocative question: do they have to? Because currently, everybody and their mom is claiming they are doing something with AI, and that the company wants to become an AI company.
Right.
But my question is: does every company have to become an AI company, or are we missing out on the big revolution and are going to be gone if we don't become the next big AI company?
Right. Yeah. I mean, the reality is that no, not everybody needs to be an AI company, right? If you're, I don't know, if your industry is painting houses, you do not need to be an AI company, right? if your industry is dealing directly with people, you don't need to be an AI company. I think there's been a couple of really good examples recently of, fast food in the US where they were testing out AI protocols at drive-thrus that failed pretty miserably.
Okay.
So, and some of that is just like,
did they disclose why this failed?
Yeah, I mean, of course they have not, because it's a,
Okay.
at the end of the day, it's a secret sauce for those enterprises that are selling these systems. But in all likelihood, you think about how a lot of these models have come to be up to this point. So Gen AI models, primarily scraping off the internet.
Yeah.
Right. So we're all out on social media exposing our lives, and these systems are pulling that data, and that's how they're creating these models. So that is why ChatGPT can answer the question, what happened during World War II, and it can add a teenage parlance to it very easily.
Yeah.
Because, right, teenagers are out like, oh, this is what happened. And they're out on the internet, they're doing that, and they're using their own, language. Epic is a word that my son uses pretty frequently, although he probably won't now. But so that is why, you can go to a Gen AI system and ask it that question and add that little bit of context, and it will respond in that parlance. However, you do not on the internet commonly order via microphone your lunch, right? And then have it respond back and forth with appropriate prompts and then receive the thing you had just asked for.
Yeah.
So that is where use cases become pretty critically important. And that is where also time, right? Because we will start adding that data into these systems, customizing them in order to do that. But yeah, not every organization needs to truly do AI, but you're right. It has become a little bit of a popularity contest. And it does increase risk, I think, for a lot of organizations. So.
Yeah, because I personally think very personal opinion, I think there will be more or less 3 categories of companies in the future. Like the ones who refuse to deal with AI at all. And I think there's a high chance that you're going to perish. Because like back in the 50s, not every company of a recognizable size had an ERP systems. Some of them were still doing it with paperwork or Excel sheets and all that. But ERP systems became such an advantage for the other companies that you had to adapt to some kind of automated ERP system.
Mhm.
And I think my prediction is that this is not as fast as people think, but this is going to happen, that AI systems for administration tasks are going to offer such a benefit that you basically can't afford to totally skip it. I think you can't totally skip it. I think you can probably skip on Gen AI for a lot, for a lot of tasks.
Yep.
But then there will be, I call it survivors, like the companies who adapt AI for their core processes. Like you said, you're painting a house, and maybe you have a chatbot who interacts at the first level with your customers and helps. Okay, yeah, this house is placed in Pittsburgh. I have to delegate that to the Pittsburgh office and all that.
Mhm.
So that the offer is created with a bit of AI support, like where you're now writing text, the Gen AI is going to probably support here, but you don't change your underlying business model.
Right.
And then there will be companies like where AI is, I mean, there is open AI and their business model is AI, and they're going to thrive. I mean, it's just like with data-driven businesses. We didn't have data-driven businesses back in the day. Now we have something like Uber, like a taxi company which has no car.
Right.
Basically, they're just selling information.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it does. It absolutely will sort of revolutionize the way we think about products, the way we think about services, right? Because chatbots are, that's really what chatbots are trying to dip their toe into, right? That's what the Laura bot was kind of trying to do, is like, could we make the Laura bot on a private part of our webpage and allow people to ask the Laura bot specific data governance questions rather than asking Laura, right?
Because we only have one. We have one Laura only, so
we have one
time
Laura
is limited there.
That's right. So yeah, it absolutely will revolutionize, and I do think in terms of that trajectory, we're dealing with a very different time frame. Like if you look at how quickly computing happened within industry, that took decades, right? And then you look at the phone, and that took maybe 15 years. And, then everybody's like, well, AI is like, well, came out in 2022 and now every organization is using it. So, there are these little like moments, right? Where all of a sudden it seems like it was nothing and then now it's something. Yeah. The trouble is when you think about it, AI has been around since 1956. So it's like, okay, but it took 66 years for AI to become an overnight sensation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. I love that sentence. It took AI. Took AI 60 years to become an overnight sensation. I love that.
Yep.
Totally.
And so, there's work there still.
Yeah. But I would like to. Now we're talking a lot about AI, and you briefly dipped into the part which is, even for me, more really foundational for AI, data.
Yeah.
Because there is no AI without data, and there is no good AI without good data.
Yeah. Wow.
I want to be quoted in the future for one sentence. I said we're coming from a shit in, shit out world to a shit in bullshit out world. Back in the day with the data repository or warehouse, it was shit in, shit out.
Yeah.
I'm coining the phrase that with AI, this is going to turn into shit in, bullshit out.
I like that. That's interesting.
It's making stuff worse.
Yeah, I mean, and it likely will in the short term. Yeah. And so a lot of that has to do with how we, as the benevolent overlords of AI, decide how to proceed. Right? So
I'm going to be executed for that quote. Okay. Heard it first here.
Yeah. Well, let's hope not. Let's hope it doesn't get quite that far. Yeah. So, it's really interesting because I had a conversation a little over a year ago at a conference, sitting at a bar talking with somebody about AI, and they were like, well, we don't have to worry about quality. We don't have to worry about data quality with AI because AI will figure it out. And, I didn't know a lot about the methodology behind machine learning and AI at the time. So I was just like, okay, really? So, it is interesting when you think about how in the world you would make a determination as to something being of high quality or not in a unstructured scenario. How do you do that? Because these algorithms have to learn from the billions, if not trillions of rows. So, and we're talking data, or I'm sorry, text, right? So, are we asking companies to somehow do a validation check of the text prior to ingestion into the model? And if we do that, what is to say that we're not doing the wrong things at the front end and producing what we would consider to be the quote unquote right result at the back end? Yeah. So I think this is a very squishy situation because we, again, have never really done this before, right? A lot of the models we're dealing with now did not deal with what we would consider in our data industry as traditional concepts of data quality.
Yeah.
They were literally, sucking all of that unstructured data in and then just building and rebuilding and tweaking those models until it produced. That's why we see, 3.5 GPT, 4.0 GPT. It's this constant restructuring of these models, tweaking it. Yeah. So I do think that data quality is a real question when we talk about completely unstructured data. And of course, in our traditional data industry, when you're talking about structured data, we know how to deal with that. We just choose often not to because it seems hard.
But this is the thing that I really find interesting. As you say, for structured data, still we know what is good, relatively good data. Let's say we can measure that. Like, okay, there are duplicates. There are, if you're sent like 5 million rows, you can see, okay, this column is missing there. This is wrong. That is wrong. The data quality is not there.
Mm-hmm.
But still, a lot of companies have a hard time fixing already these rather basic, rather tangible results. So like, how often have you seen duplicates or trash data in a dashboard? Like, I can't count.
Yep.
And we haven't fixed this issue yet. Right. And now with structured data, which is understandable to machines better than to humans.
Mm-hmm.
Usually. So machines dealing with structured data, that's their home turf.
It's the machine readable code. Yeah. Numbers are.
It's the machine readable code. It's their home. Yeah. It's their home turf. And we are not even able to get this solved. Then how in the world can we expect unstructured data to be of high quality for a machine which is not initially built to process these data? This is where I say, okay, guys, ladies, gentlemen, Houston, we got a problem.
Yep. Yeah. And that's, and so I completely agree with you, right? It's the idea I wrote in the book about how, I can, in my 25-year career in the data industry, I could probably point out 10 or fewer organizations that took data quality seriously. Yeah. And granted, it's a flawed sample, right? Because people that come to me are usually in a problem, they need help, right?
Yeah, but they're not coming if things are working fine.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But still, I'm talking about those organizations that I've been exposed to, even casually. Like, oh, I know somebody that works there. I've heard about it at conferences. Most of us do not apply really solid methodologies to data quality processes in our existing data repositories. We've always struggled with that. And that was a question that, really sort of I got stuck on when I was thinking about, okay, if we're going to do this data revolution in the context of AI for our enterprises, what do we do about data quality? And that's where, at the end of the day, that's why governance with a capital G became a thing. And if you've read Disrupting Data Governance, you know that I do not stand on long-held conventions about how enterprises have dealt with data governance, because I think we have gotten in our own way a lot, right? But when we talk about bringing AI on board, the speed and scale in which we can this shit up is so so far off the charts in a way that most of us couldn't even comprehend right now. So before you dive headfirst into a, pool of 2 inches, perhaps you take a beat and start to think a little bit about what are you trying to get out at the end of this, and how do you govern in a way that allows you to put some constraints on the enthusiasm while not impeding your innovation. And that's really that balance that I think that we all have to strike.
This was just perfect. I mean,
Yes,
there's nothing to add. Like I always compare this when people start say they want to start with AI and they haven't even tackled the basics of data like the last decades. I say, okay, hey, you're trying to hand in your PhD thesis and you haven't done your homework since 4th grade.
Right.
What do you expect to be the result?
Right. Yeah.
You're not going to pass, probably.
Yeah, but people don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
Right? They really don't. And that's where I talk a lot about disruption, because of course we're all living in a very disruptive world now, right? Change used to be sort of this, we have change, you got to do change management, but change has become a little bit more of a constant. And as that has happened, disruption has become a bigger and bigger deal, right? If you look back even in the last 5 years, disruption in our worlds in the last 5 years have been off the charts.
Yeah.
How do enterprises manage that, right? Like that huge churn, right? Because the thing is, we don't want to be told we can't do something, especially when everybody else seems to be doing it. It's human nature. Right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So that's
so basically that's the hard truth that nobody wants to hear.
Yes.
It's like you said, it took AI over 60 years to have an overnight success.
Yeah.
So, and basically that's the other thing that nobody wants to hear. There is no overnight success with the AI tools if you don't do your freaking homework before. If you haven't cleaned up your room, you're not gonna be allowed to have a dinner.
Yep.
So it's like with children. Clean up your room, then we go to dinner.
Yep. Yeah. I should have done that with my son more. Oh, well.
Hope I didn't hit a soft spot there. So, but Laura, one final advice maybe for the audience, not to leave them not with totally at the depressing end of you have to do that and that. If they want to start now dealing and doing something with AI, where should we start getting our homework done?
Yeah.
I mean, apart from reading Disrupting Data Governance and the AI and Data Revolution, which is a good starting point, and Laura has a very entertaining writing style, so
thank you.
Really recommend it there.
Yeah, thank you. So there were a couple of things that became very obvious to me and during this research, and the one thing that I recommend organizations do, unless they are an AI organization and sort of know this stuff, you have to start with understanding what you're talking about. There is no easy button here. We have to understand how these systems work, because so many people talk about AI like they understand it, but when you start sort of asking them questions, pretty clear they don't. And you cannot advise your organization, if you think that, whatever you think, right? Because there are a lot of inappropriate assumptions about AI. So one of the things I recommend is you got a bunch of people in your organization that are excited to learn about it, let them learn about it, and then have them reflect it back to the enterprise and create essentially a bunch of learning modules about what AI is. Because you really, in order to be making decisions about your organization and the use cases and how you need to proceed, you really have to have that baseline understanding. If you don't want to do that, then hire somebody that can do it for you, but you have to start by being informed about it, right? And then you can go from there. I think that's probably one of the most important things. Most enterprises don't really want to do that, but again, it's like the speed and scale of these systems, and the way that governments are trying to regulate you, the risk is entirely too high for you to not sort of stop long enough to understand the decisions that you're going to be making and the impacts of those choices. So I would say that is probably the first thing I would recommend, is get a little special ops team together and start learning about AI.
Perfect advice. So you heard it here. Go out, build your own special ops or SWAT team, and go there. So Laura, the people who are maybe joining from the German episodes and also listening to me in English, they know what's coming. You don't. But there's a ritual at the end of each episode, and there are 2 questions that every guest has to go through. So, Laura, what was the last song that just was running on repeat in your head?
So I often have songs in my head. It is a weird, and I often refer to things in songs. As a matter of fact, in the book AI and Data Revolution, there are references to songs throughout the text. But recently, the song Home by Daughtry has been on repeat the last couple days in my brain.
Not my genre, but awesome musician. And so the second would be more of a I would beg you to recommend a book to me and the audience out there, which we should absolutely read, with just 2 minor restrictions. One is that it's not some shady adult literacy. Not that I've seen anything up there in their bookshelf. And the other one is, we know all that you've written 4 awesome books, but right now, please don't recommend your own books, but something somebody else wrote and we should read. And apart from that, it's totally open. Children books are allowed, comics are allowed, everything else.
All right. Well, since I started this whole process, there's been one book that I visual aid here, literally been carrying around with me. It is usually within a few feet of me, and it's this book. So it is Artificial Intelligence, A Guide for a Thinking Human by Melanie Mitchell. As you can tell, I have. Yeah. It is probably one of the best primers on AI that I have read. And I read a lot of books trying to get my brain, again, learning about what I'm, talking about. So, but that is probably one of the best sort of baseline books on AI. It's really very informative and well written.
So you heard it. You had the tip to start with AI, the best hint you got, and you got one of the best primers for AI. So everybody out there, you got no excuses anymore to miss out on on AI at any point in time.
That's right.
And dear Laura, thanks again for taking the time to do this interview and for the awesome conversation. I learned a lot from you and really enjoyed it. And of course, thank you to our fellow listeners for tuning in today. And yeah, this is the moment where I kindly would ask you to just click subscribe or follow or whatever that button is where you listen to your podcast. Laura is also on LinkedIn as I am. So if you have any questions, hit us up on LinkedIn, click follow or connect and raise any questions you might have. We're happy to answer them. And yeah, that's it for today. I'm looking forward to seeing and hearing you around next time, and have a great time until then.